Welcome to Booked All Night Season 2. Each week, Jess, Katie, and Maggie launch into new worlds, discover amazing characters, and bring you the best bookish discussions under the stars. We're a cozy little corner of the internet, so be sure to leave a comment and join the polls after each episode. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Alright, my little Libranauts, grab a seat, grab a book, and join us as we explore some new pages. Before we dive into today's episode, we want to provide a brief trigger warning. This episode discusses topics that may be distressing for some listeners. We encourage you to take care of yourself and skip this episode if you feel it may be triggering. Your well-being is important to us. Thank you for listening. There were so many good lines in this section. There was so much good action in this section. Like, I am tickled pink as a writer and as a reader. And like, when we get to chapter 23, because we can't start at chapter 23, we have to get to chapter 23. But chapter 23, like, I wanted to call you and wake you up. And it was like 3 in the morning when I got there. I was so excited.
Jesus.
You know, chapter 23 made me want to reinstate doing my quote books, where like I just had a whole bunch of journals of quotes that I loved. Like the language was beautiful, or the quote was like really snappy kind of thing. And like I feel like I'm gonna be doing that again. Just oh my god. So
oh my god, indeed.
These are my actual critical thoughts on Rebel Witch, are just I'm gonna have to edit this down because I know that it's loud. I just okay. So we leave off and Rune has turned around. Gideon has already left her after she's like, look, I hit the thing. And Gideon's on his way with, like, Abigail. Abigail. And Rune is on her way somewhere with William. We have this lovely line of how Gideon was thinking just after that scene. With Gideon was still thinking about the way Rune fit against his chest, soft and warm and small. He didn't know why he'd asked about her dream, because the way she'd called his name in the dark last night was best forgotten. She'd never said it like that before. Half cry, half moan.
Ugh. Yes.
Ugh. I love this section because I was like, I wasn't blushing from embarrassment, but I was like, ha ha, he heard her, ha 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 ha. It was funny. But I love this line because it's so emotional, where he's like, okay, like she very clearly had a sex dream, but he's actively trying to move on and forget that because of the situation that they're in. And just this little bit shows that. Like, that's so good. Like the just how powerful just a few sentences can be. Like, what a great example. I want to get to chapter 23, so I'm looking for my next highlighted quote.
Oh boy. God, the conversation immediately after that with Gideon and Abby, where she's like, you used to despise aristos, like she's not your type, and you know, you enjoy someone who can challenge you. She's sweet, but she's not that kind of girl. And he's like, yeah, I used to think that too.
Oh yeah. So there's that where Abby is like kind of selling Gideon Rune, where she's like, you need someone that challenges you. And he's like, yeah, she challenges me. Like, she challenges my blood pressure, right? Like, and that scene's, okay.
Yeah.
So in that scene where Abby's like, I don't understand why you didn't choose me, why you didn't leave the Blood Guard and come find me, because obviously I'm your match and that I'm, I love you. But that'll come up in a little bit after chapter 23, which is important. In the meantime, while they're having that conversation, Gideon finally realizes that Rune did not follow them into the party. And he's like, wait, where's my quote unquote wife? And so he goes looking for them, and he finds Rune with William, and William is Sketchball.
Super sus.
Yeah, also, he's the spy. Called it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's trying to get Rune to sleep with him?
God, it was the worst thing. Like, he confronts her in the boiler room later, because he takes her down to the boiler room, shows her everything. She's like, wow, my grandma's ships were only ever wind powered. This is, a miraculous or a marvel of technology.
Yes, also really great little world building piece that, like, this is new technology and we're moving into the steam age in this world.
Yes. And she's trying to investigate more of the boiler room, and Gideon comes down and is like, you gotta go, you gotta leave, what the hell do you think you're doing with my wife? Meanwhile, entire time, Rune is like sweating and like perspiring from the steam in the boiler room, and she's like, oh shit, my casting mark is going to wash off. Oh.
So there's that. There's also Rune is like genuinely surprised when William starts making a move on her. And then she's got the echo of Gideon being like, trust me, I'm a man, I know what he wants. And she's like, you don't know anything, you blah, 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 blah. And here that is coming around where we all obviously knew that William was like, when he first comes into play, you can almost make the argument that, like, okay, he's flirting, but he's not a problem. Then he hits on her when she's drunk. That's a bit more of a problem, but also still kind of genuinely flirting, and it doesn't feel like he's trying to take advantage of a girl that's drunk, just that he is flirting with a girl who is clearly getting drunk. Then you have this part, and this part is super aggressive, where he's like putting his arm in her way and like trapping her in corners and against walls, and she's just like zoop, getting out of the way, like, okay, I don't want to be that close to you. I don't like. And she outright says, I'm sorry, I'm married, even though, married, quote unquote. And then Gideon comes down, and you have behind them a voice roared like thunder, louder than the engine's noise. What the hell do you think you're doing with my wife? And William flinched. And Gideon is upset. Because, of course he is, because he still obviously loves Rune. Like, these are not secrets to the reader, even though they are secrets to Gideon and Rune, apparently.
It's just, the miscommunication pisses me off so much in this book.
Oh my god, so much.
The lessons they relearn every other chapter about, we can betray, she's gonna betray me, he's gonna betray me, he doesn't love me. Well, not
if I betray him first.
Yeah, anyone can betray anyone. It is just getting on my nerves. The repetition of I'm going to betray them before they betray me is definitely like, I'm on my last nerve with it, right? There is a time and place for repetition. This is not it. At this point, we need them to either do the actual betraying, or they need to actually talk to each other, because they do have a little bit of a moment when Gideon is trapping her in the boiler room because he's upset. He's yelling at her about, getting close to William, and, you're making a fool of me.
Is it, listen, you demon, I will carry you out of here if I have to, and you know it?
That is a good one, but I'm more talking about the next page on 150 and 151, where they're talking about Alex, like, candidly for the first time, because he's like attacking her for, pretending and, falling prey to her.
Because you were in love. Yeah, you were in love with my brother, and she's like, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, and then, they're talking about that, and then she gives him her truth, where she would have married him in a heartbeat if he had asked. Like,
even knowing that he would have turned her over.
Yeah. That's how pathetic I am. That's how desperately I wanted to be yours. And then, because he's like, well, why did you say yes to my brother? Like, kind of, seeing if she's leading him on. He's like, well, because I did love him, but as a friend, and he was, he knew me and he didn't hate me. He didn't want me to be dead. And that's, a fair thing to want in a partner.
Yeah. I also do love this section because it is this miscommunication coming to a heat, right? And you can only have, like, I don't love the miscommunication trope. It's very prophecy trope to me, and it reads very like, some of it almost seems on purpose from the characters, right? Like there was that scene in Heartless Hunter where they're about to go swimming and Gideon's just starting arguments because he's like, oh, you think this of the poor, and she's like, are you like really that determined to misunderstand what I'm saying? And so I still kind of feel that way between these two characters with the miscommunications that they have. But I loved this scene because it's bringing it close to the head, right? They still haven't had an outright discussion. They've only had arguments. They've only had these truths kind of being boiled out of them. As producer Rob points out, miscommunication is equivalent to stilted writing. It's how we keep things going on when we don't really know what they should be saying to each other right now. Yes. And it's ultimately a stall.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels every single time it comes up. Like, I can understand this miscommunication comes up, twice, 3 times, whatever. But the amount of times that we've been having it, and also like carrying it over from Heartless Hunter into Rebel Witch, then it's just too much miscommunication. At that point, that just feels like you're dragging your feet. You're only doing it because you need the words. You want to buff up the word count a little bit. You want to drag it out because if they actually had this conversation the next time they talked, if they had any kind of meaningful conversation that's not an argument or saying, oh, you're just going to betray me kind of things thrown around, that a lot of the tension and a lot of the plot almost hinges on that. So if they get over their shit, if they get over their hangups, once they actually have this conversation, all of the wind is going to leave the metaphorical sails of the story, or it would completely change the outcome, because once they understand they're on the same team, they're trying to help each other, they are still in love with each other, they become a force to be reckoned with that can completely change whatever the intended outcome is of the story of what Kristen Ciccerelli has plotted out. And this just feels like she is trying to stick to her outline more rigidly than, someone else who doesn't stick to an outline as religiously to it. Gives the room to turn the plot room to, flourish and move, but it just feels like it's dragging its feet for no discernible reason.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's been going on so long, and it's no longer tension. It's annoying, and I'm just like, yes. talk, just say something to each other.
You're right.
And
like, I was so excited for the forced proximity in the cabin, and nothing came out of it except for the sex dream. Like,
yeah,
you could have had so much. It was funny, but you could have had so much more, progress in their relationship and clearing up the miscommunication that was totally missed. But what I also really loved about the end of this chapter is not only is she finally taking off the ring and giving it to Gideon, she also realizes that for better or for worse, Rune needed these things to feel alive. Adventure challenge. In wanting her to live a safe, easy life, Alex was, without realizing it, wanting Rune to be less herself.
Yep.
So despite seeing her as a girl, just a girl, someone to be, cherished and loved and fought for, Gideon, sees her as a target, as prey, as a witch to hunt down and hate. But he doesn't want to change who she is intrinsically. But this part at the end of chapter 22 is what I really loved the most, where it goes, there was a part of Rune's soul, most of it maybe, that yearned for adventure, that craved a challenge, that liked a little danger. For better or worse, Rune needed these things to feel alive. In wanting her to live a safe, easy life, Alex was, without realizing it, wanting Rune to be less herself.
There's also some clarification that she says to him when she takes off the ring and she finally gives it back to Gideon, because it is his parents' ring. And She says,
Yes.
I was just a girl to Alex, someone to be loved and cherished and fought for. That's why I said yes to him. I'm not a girl to you, am I?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a witch, and I always will be. Something to be hated and hunted down, not cherished or protected, not loved. And he does not.
He doesn't respond.
And that brings us to chapter 23, which I really want to talk about.
Yes.
So it opens up where he's stunned by this, right? He's like, well, she's right. She's not just a girl. And she's so much more than that. She's a sparring partner. She's someone to fight with and admire and match. She's a force, and he can barely keep up with her. And he wants to go after her. And the line is, the problem was, well, there were a lot of problems. Right? Like, it's very, very complicated. One, they openly hate each other. It's not like he can just walk up and be like, hey, listen, I actually realized just now that I love you, because Rune would be like, hey, no, you don't. Right? Like that. She would absolutely call him out and be like, that's crap. So they wind up going back to the party, and they're dancing, and they're mad at each other, and they're trying to keep up that they are like this loving couple and they're newlyweds. So they wind up dancing with each other. And then
specifically because he realizes that the illusion is fading. You know, her eyes go from blue to gray and from blonde.
Right. And so he's trying to get her to the
blonde.
corner so she can recast it and hide the casting mark, maybe get her under a table or something. And that's when we have, I have to skip this line because otherwise I have to censor the line. But he says, F it! Taking Rune's face in his hands, drawing her gaze to his, Gideon did what he'd wanted to do for days now, which is really nice here, that they are at least admitting to themselves that they still very blatantly have feelings for each other, but they will not admit it to each other, right? Ever since he found her crying in that powder room, he slid his hands into her hair and kissed her. Rune tensed like a deer in a hunter's crosshairs.
Don't fight me, baby.
Wasn't that a weird thought for him to have?
That was a weird thought, and it just, like, I have mixed feelings about it, because damn, do I love, like a possessive
who did that to you, right? Yeah.
In romance. Yeah. But also, it just felt so out of left
it doesn't
field
match
for
the
him.
character. I feel like we were just talking about this because we just recorded the Tolkien episode, which I think by the time this episode goes up, the Tolkien episode won't be out yet. Possible. But we were talking about that verisimilitude and that realism in fiction and fantasy and keeping up with your character and keeping up with the world. I don't even feel like Don't Fight Me, Baby fits into the world, even with what we just saw with William, right? William's got some weird lines back here. I'm going to go back and find him because he's creepy and I hate him and I want him to get...
And he only gets worse later.
Yeah, he only gets worse later is correct. Oh, yeah, so before this section, right, he's... William's got, like, the corner of William's mouth lifted. Then let's see if we can blah, 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 blah. But that's not... Don't fight me, baby. Like, some BS 80s rom-com. Like, just somebody standing outside the cabin window with a boombox and just, like, listen to me. So they have this very, very heavy, very heated kiss. And there's some great quotes in here. If this was weakness, he wanted to be weak. If this was sin, let him be damned to hell. And I was like, oh, I love this. This is him finally coming into it, finally admitting to these feelings, and like maybe they'll finally have a talk, right? So she was hidden here in the darkness. He needed to step away and let her recast the spell, and instead he tipped her head back and kissed her harder. Is this real? His mouth asked, can I trust you? And obviously, we can't just have them fall back into place, like writing wise, right? They would still have to question this regardless. And at the very least, believe the other is going to betray them, even if they're not sitting there going, I'm going to betray you before you betray me, because anybody can betray anybody, and repeat it 15 times a chapter.
Yeah.
And let me just read this part, because this is the part that I wanted to call you about at 3 a.m. Pain exploded inside him, hot and sharp and excruciating. Starting in his scar, it ricocheted outward like a detonated bomb. Gideon gasped for air. I need to ensure you're mine, Cressida's voice echoed, like a nightmare shattering a dream, mine alone.
My God, like right before that, because he's saying how much he wants to take, the things he wanted to do to her, and wants to take her back to the cabin, lay her down in bed, and that's when the pain happens. And it is just such a slap to the face. I almost forgot that had happened in this book, because chapter 24 talks about the branding and the spell that she had initially put into him, but hadn't been able to activate until the beginning of this book. And that is, anytime that he wanted to be with someone else, he only ever saw them as Cressida. And that clearly is very traumatic for him. Someone who had been sexually assaulted by Cressida and tortured and all that. And just as he was about to be like, I really want to be with Rune, Cressida comes here and is like, it's your thought.
Ha ha ha.
Who's your thought?
Ha ha ha. Like, this was such a good twist. Right, because all of my suspicions on this curse, this was not it. I was like, obviously, he's going to, like, drop dead or catch on fire if he ever sees another girl, or, like, his little witch hunter won't work, The gun won't fire, etc. But to have this reminder of that trauma, like, my eyes opened wide when I realized that so many things happen here. One, Gideon is traumatized, right? He's just all over again, and we saw what she does to him, right? In the first 10 chapters in the bathroom. She's just like, hey, you're fun to kill, la 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 la. Because she's insane.
Yeah.
She's batshit insane. But he recoils and he yanks himself away from Rune. And so from Rune's point of view, he's like, oh my God, you're disgusting. And, he's recoiling from her. And there's some of the lines here from Gideon's point of view I have it highlighted was, Gideon recalled the times he'd touched Rune since then, grabbing her gloved hand, lacing her dress, taking off her shoes. It was never skin-to-skin contact until now. Tonight, he'd cupped her face, run his fingers over her jaw, kissed her mouth, and suddenly he knew that Cressida's curse did, and he hated her even more. And that's when Rune is like, okay, so you are disgusted by me and I have to get away. But this is also very confusing, because this kiss was intimate. It wasn't just he's holding my face and walking me into a corner, or like when they were coming out of the dress shop and she's like, oh no, he has a gun to my head. I hope he doesn't move it to the left, the other left. Go to the door to your left. Like, this was emotional. Yeah. This was feral almost. And then she leaves, right? Which, yes. I would too. I'd be like, hey, I don't know what's going on here, but whatever. So then Gideon has so much to go through. And he's got so much anger in him and so much frustration in him, and he has nowhere to put it right now. One of the lines in there is that he wants to put his fist through glass.
Take a jagged piece and cut the brand out of his skin. Which is exactly when Abby shows up.
Yes.
To put a jagged piece of glass in our skins. Right in the heart. Right over here.
Before that, I want to focus on just this line for a moment. So I struggle to get emotions on the page, right? Yeah. I struggle to label my own emotions, so it's very hard to write other people's emotions. And I just want to be like, she was mad because obviously, and then move on. But that's not good writing. This is really great. right? The desperation here. One, you've never seen somebody put their fist through a mirror or glass or a wall or anything because they're like, hot damn, I'm in such a good mood. Bam, right? Like, they're upset and they're so overwhelmed. And this is overwhelming. Even as a reader, this was overwhelming. I was like, oh my God, like the trauma and the physical form of that to just come back and haunt you whenever you touched something that could have been saving you from that. That's especially cruel, and it does so much characterization on Gideon as well as Cressida, because that is above and beyond cruelty.
Yeah.
And then you also have this line of desperation where he's willing to mutilate himself to get this scar off of him. This is so well done, and this is 2 sentences. If you go through a lot of craft books, right, they're always like, use the right words and the right verbs, and you just kind of want to like take that page out, crumple it up, and toss it into a fire somewhere because, like, obviously that's what writing is choosing the right words. But this is what they mean, right? There's no superfluous. So you don't have to explain to me that he's frustrated and overwhelmed. You can literally just show me. And these 2 lines do it perfectly on their own. And that's great. And then Abby shows up.
Yeah.
And then freaking Abby. And she like talks about his debts and his drug use. And she's like, is that why you married this girl? Because she can solve your debts? Because the last time she saw Gideon was when he was like, I'm going to go get shit-faced and super high and let people beat the ever-loving shit out of me. And she hasn't seen him since then. So she's like, oh, obviously you're still a drug addict, and now you have somebody that can pay for your drug addiction. And he's like, no, but I understand where you're coming from, but no.
Right.
And
what really struck me in this scene was when she's talking about all this, you married her for her money, you don't have to.
Isn't that like such a creepy line for anyone to say? You don't have to pretend with me.
And they're on such radically different pages that, she is there because she wants to get back together with him because clearly she is his intended love. She is perfect for him. She's his match.
Even though from her point of view, he's married.
And he's just like, yeah. And then he's just like, well, I need to know if you're the spy. Because you talked to Harrow a week ago.
Not only that. Not only I need to know if you're the spy, and so I have to ask you weird questions. But would the curse activate? Is it only Rune who triggers it, or can anyone? He cupped Abby's neck and kissed her back.
Yes.
The seconds ticked by, the old memories after the revolt.
Yes.
And Gideon felt nothing, no flaring scar, no excruciating pain.
Yes.
So...
But it reminds me so much about the way Rune is with other people, because like Rune, in her point of views, in her chapters, we see how much she picks up on other people flirting with Gideon. So like she immediately picked up on Abby and sussed out that sort of relationship.
To be fair, she didn't
have confirmation until
Abby's
later
about as subtle as a brick through a window.
They're kind of they were together. That's fair. That's fair. But, and then Gideon is the same way, where he's like, he can suss out all the guys who are flirting with her, and Rune's just like, what do you mean? And they're both oblivious when it comes to themselves, as opposed to being so tuned in to what other people are doing to them. It was just a really interesting dynamic, because so far in this book, all we have seen is, oh, you don't understand, I'm a man, I know what a man wants when they talk to a girl, and meanwhile, he's over here and a girl's talking to him and he's like, I have no idea what you want. Are you a spy?
I do love that as like these two as foils of each other, right? Like they just play off of each other. They mirror each other, that it's like, well, you're stupid. No, you're stupid. Well, you're oblivious. No, you're oblivious. And they both are, right? Because William comes into the picture and you're like, oh yeah, he obviously wants to hit on Rune. He is hitting on Rune. Abby comes into the picture. She's obviously hitting on, Gideon, and Gideon's like, no, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So the curse is that because I have been thinking up until then. All right. So what exactly activates this curse? And it was like, is it anyone he touches? Is it any just kind of like even like a handhold or like grabbing someone's arm if they're like falling or something, or is it just like intimate kisses? But I'm thinking because it's less about that, and I think it's more about his intent and the depth of his emotion for the person, because he's kissing Abby, but he doesn't feel the same way about her. It's all sort of just like a thing that happened to him. Meanwhile, with Rune, the moment that we get that curse that explodes out of him is the moment that he started thinking, I want to take her to bed. I want to, do sexy things with her. And that's when the pain was just like, bleh.
I think the line that we're going to get to define what ultimately triggers it is because Gideon loves Rune. And like,
yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm here for it. I don't want to be here for it, but I'm here for it because who doesn't love true love, right? Mm-hmm. Like I say in the bitterest of voices. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think right now, canonically, the trigger is his sexual intention. We know that Cressida has not, what's the word? She hasn't triggered it prior to now. And we also know that he's had sex with other girls. That's something that gets covered in Heartless Hunter, where he's got a body count, right? Mm-hmm. not just the witches, but
I do think it's because specifically once she activates mm-hmm. the curse when they meet again in the bathroom at Soren's party. Because she had said something like, I hadn't been able to activate it until now. So that meant it was just kind of dormant, so it wouldn't really kind of cause him that debilitating pain. And I think it was just then when she activated it, and he hasn't admitted to himself at the very least, because he was in the process of admitting to himself that he loves her
Cressida
still.
Batshit.
Rune, that is, not Cressida. And that's sort of, and that's when the curse activates is once he's sort of come around to the feelings and the desires that he's got.
I think you raise a good point too about things got activated in that bathroom scene when she was torturing him and all the lightning pain and everything else there, because the magic in this world isn't remote, right? It's not a girl going, well, zap, here are my lightning powers, or I'm going to use telekinesis. It's specifically from blood and contact and these spells and these symbols. So it's very old world and what's the word I'm looking for? Like tangible. It's a tangible magic. You have to have touched it. You have to have activated it somehow. That's not just like I'm speaking a word from a continent away.
Yeah.
So I think you are correct in that she did activate it in that scene. Because he's had other close moments with Rune since then, but they have not been with his intent to be like, oh, I want to kiss you and love you. They have been, oh, I want to blow your brains out with this gun, you demon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we follow Rune back into the boiler room because she's like, I need to check out this cargo hold. Will it fit some witches to smuggle across the sea? And dun dun dun, William is there. And he's being real kind of
shady,
real kind of skeevy. Yeah, super shady, super skeevy. He tells her about Abby and Gideon. So he knows that Abby went to get to their cabin and is with Gideon, or was at some point with Gideon.
I got the idea that he put that idea in Abby's head. That he was like,
that's a good point.
Hey, listen, Gideon clearly doesn't love this girl because, he leaves her, his new wife, right? Gideon's not doing a very good job keeping up the we just got married ruse.
Yeah.
So William absolutely took advantage of that. But yes, he's so creepy. He's so creepy.
And then as Rune is trying to get out of that room because he's kind of trapped her in the cargo hold, and she's like, oh, do you like cards? We can go play some cards. And then all of a sudden, the click of a cocked pistol. And he's like, turn around, Crimson Moth. So he knows who she is. And Rune starts to blame herself. She's like, once again, like, my flirtatious games have gotten me in a bind, have finally caught up to me. And then she remembers, no, I never flirted with him.
That line made me really angry because first off, once she said that with the flirtatious games, I was like, you didn't flirt with him. Then the very next line is, except I didn't flirt with him. So I was like, all right. But I didn't like this moment of victim blaming. And I especially didn't like it for Rune, because Rune knows what she's doing. We learned that in Heartless Hunter. This is a game that she has played over and over and over and over and over again. I think that she would know whether her actions got her there or not.
Right. But she's been under a lot of, like, not fire, but, like, Gideon has been reminding her of, like, oh, you're the seductress. Oh, you've been doing this. You played me for a fool. You know, made me think you were in love with me kind of situation. So she's kind of, I feel like maybe she's just been internalizing that. And that's where she comes up with this, you know, self-victim blame situation. And then he's just like, oh God, there's a part here on the next page, where Rune is trying to come up with some way to defend herself. She's trying to figure out how to get out of here, how she can reach for her knife before William can shoot her. And she goes, this was the end. And Gideon didn't even know where she was, nor does he care. The gaslight flickered again, changing the shadows behind William. And first of all, the use of gaslight in that moment, I just felt was a sort of narrative irony, because she's gaslighting herself, like he doesn't care.
I didn't even think of that. I was just like, oh yeah, like let's settle down into the steampunk kind of aesthetic that we've built in this world. I didn't even think about the actual gaslighting happening from the two of them.
Yeah. And then William's next line is, I'll make a deal with you. If you come back to my room, I won't shoot you. And she is under no other impression of what's going to happen if she follows him to the room. And she's like, I'd rather be shot.
And his next line is, and if I don't give you a choice.
Yes.
I was like, ugh. Oh,
super skeevy.
Oh, it was so skeevy and obviously rapey, and I was just like, oh, I want her to like slit his throat. I hate him so much. And then Gideon shows up.
Right, and I'm cheering, like, oh, he's finally gonna like kick his ass, and you know, he even says, oh, I'm gonna take care of it, gonna put him at the bottom of the sea.
Yep. But instead, dun dun dun, Gideon finally betrays Rune.
Yeah. Or at the very least says that he will. Or tries to enact that plan, at the very least.
Here's the deal for Gideon right now. One, obviously, he loves Rune and doesn't want her to be raped and or shot. Two, William sucks. And so he does come in. He gets William to drop the gun. He's holding a gun to William's head, and he's like, I'll shoot you. I'll just do it. Because I hate you. And Rune leaves the room, which is very...
quote unquote.
Yeah. Hard to say. Rune leaves the room. And Gideon has a conversation with William, because William is obviously the spy. And he's like, listen, you can't let her get caught on the ship. Cressida is trying to revive her sisters, and Rune knows something about that. And we need to use her as a bargaining chip, because regardless, they're going to invade, blah, 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 blah. And also, I need a way to get her past the Bloodhounds, blah, 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 blah. And Rune hears all of this, because she's actually just sitting in the steam. But what I really liked was after, William, I hate William. Screw this up, said William, and it'll be over for you. When it is, I'm coming for your little moth. And it took everything in Gideon not to raise his gun and fire. And I was like, just raise your gun and fire, man. Like, just do it. So
I wanted to reach into the page and make his finger go on the God, now I can't think of words.
Like,
the trigger. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Way.
Then we finally arrive back in the New Republic, and there's all sorts of complications happening here. One, Rune is like, okay, well, he finally did the thing. He betrayed me, but it's okay because I know that he betrayed me, and I obviously didn't trust him. And she's up on the bow at this point as they start to get closer to the New Republic. It used to be Cascadia. Now it is the Republic of the Red Peace. And even though it's changed, it's still her home. It's still where she grew up. It's still where Wintersea is, right? And he asks her outright, did you miss it? And the line here is, Rune straightened, her body recognizing a predator. And this is something that comes up a lot whenever Gideon or Rune comes up behind one or the other, is something about their sizes and the predator and prey dynamic that they have between the two of them. Okay, so I like the repetition of it because it adds to the complication of their relationship. One, they obviously have feelings for each other. It's romantasy. They're going to wind up together. Nobody is on the fence about that happening, right? But it's also pointing out something that I don't think comes up in a lot of romance stories, where if this guy wanted to kill you, he could. And it's something that a lot of women do talk about now, right? There's a lot about it on social media. There's whole movements with it where it's like,
you know, man or the bear.
Man or the bear. Bear. Blood hunter, blood guard or the bear. And it's like, I think I will take the bear. The bear will leave my clothes on while it destroys me. But this is something that she constantly has to think about. If he ever one day, even if they believed that the other loved them, right? The reality is that if Gideon one day woke up and decided that he wanted to kill her, he could. And he could do it without weapons. He is that much larger than her. He is that much more muscular than her. And it's something that she will always have to think about. And so it always comes up. I think that is an important piece of characterization, especially for Rune. And I think it is an important piece of information to have whenever discussing their relationship.
Yeah. See, I like it in terms of the characterization and this threat that she feels from him. But from a reader's perspective, seeing this sort of, oh, she's so tiny and wispy and small. You know, she woke up in an anthill this morning, and he's so big and burly, and you know can shout louder than a goddamn steam engine. But like it is so annoying to me how often that size comes up in a sort of size difference kink kind of way. It kind of annoys me, but I do agree with you in that it is a great way to characterize the threat that she's under. The very real threat, especially, you know, as it pertains to the, you know, how women feel in real life. But they are back in the Republic. And
they're back in the Republic, and we're officially in part 2. Yes. And we get this lovely little artifact of from the diary of the Queen Althea the Good, who we know is the queen that outlawed arcana magic.
Yes.
And it's, we witches were given a precious gift, and with that gift comes a sacred task. The ancients bestowed magic on us for one purpose, to use for the good, the true, and the beautiful. My cousin intends to twist this purpose with vicious lies. I feel them spreading through my court like poison, a little more every day, infecting even my closest advisors. I fear I can no longer stop her. The worst is imminent. Tonight I will go to the stones and ask for wisdom's help. One thing I know from reading Heartless Hunter is that we don't get these things just to get these things. And so as we come into, we're reading up to chapter 40 for next episode. I want to know how this will play. What the reasoning is for getting this information. And I also want to point out, because a lot of fantasy, a lot of sci-fi genre fiction in general, right? Like even supernatural things tend to have these little asides of world building, and I love them. I think it's really great because you can get, this little bit of world building instead of interrupting the narrative.
Yes.
But each one of them adds something, and it's information that we need. So I want to know, like, why do I need to know that Queen Althea the Good was blatantly overthrown? Because that's what it sounds like is about to happen in this diary entry.
Which could mean that the sisters, the Roseblood sisters, aren't really like the legitimate heir. They aren't, because they could be cousins or descendants of Althea's cousins. But if Althea got disposed of with the cousins who intend to
what
vicious lies, and therefore the real heirs are descendants of Althea, and that's kind of how we get around the Rune is a Roseblood, but she is actually related to Althea, whose last name we don't get.
Kind of like Tudors and Plantagenets.
That went over my head. I don't know the history there.
Fine. One of us could be a student of Hathaway. So for War of the Roses, for the English throne, is between the Yorks and the Plantagenets, where you have King Richard and them warring against each other and then eventually marrying, and then they become the Tudor family, which leads to King Henry VIII. Hooray!
Yay!
And other history facts here on Book Don't I. Anywho.
But yeah, that makes me think that they don't have a legitimate claim, technically, or someone else has the legitimate claim to the witch throne.
Do we canonically know how long it's been since Queen Althea?
I don't think so.
Because if it's only a little bit, then your theory could absolutely be true of they maybe don't have a legitimate claim to it. The other thing is, like, if it is older, then the bloodline of the, like, lost heir, quote unquote, could be very long, at which point you're like, are we looking at, like, a 300-year-old bloodline that got lost, or are we looking at, like, Cressida's mom and dad had an affair kind of thing? Just to
hopefully find out.
And just to cap us off, as we leave off, they get off the ship. We learn that the good commander has taken over Wintersea, so Rune can't go home.
The good commander's son.
The good commander's son.
No.
Correct.
Yeah. He actually lives in Wintersea, and she goes through it. But yeah, she finds out that he's claimed it after you left, and she's just like she had a choice in the matter. Rune hadn't left; she'd been forced to flee for her life. But she's thinking about her books and her clothes, her casting room, Lady, her horse. I've been thinking about what's been happening to Lady, Nan's gardens, and there's no mention. Yeah, she's probably dead. The handmaiden that she had, whose name Lisbeth. I can't remember. Lisbeth. I just realized we don't know what happened to her, but she's probably dead because witch sympathizer, and all that. And she feels like all of her, it's all been taken from her.
Yeah,
it technically belongs to no one.
Yeah, and she's like, well, where am I going to go? Gideon's like, my apartment. And there's all sorts of emotions here too, because the last time she was in Gideon's apartment was right after they had slept together, and she wakes up to hear him being like, oh, it was fine. I got my little witch hunter wet, and that's all that mattered, right? And she's like, oh, wow, okay, that's all I was to you, and I guess that's all we were to each other, and I conned myself, and you conned, like, okay, whatever, and she leaves, and he had chased her down. But also, it's where he brought her when he turned her in. And so she's like, little complicated about going here. I don't really want to go here. And And upon entering, they're there for like a few minutes. The blood guard shows up and Gideon's like, okay, up to the roof with you. And she's like, what if you don't come back? He's like, then you're on your own. And the blood guard arrests Gideon. And so she's on her own. And that is where we have left off. And
yes,
I genuinely don't know what her plan is, because she doesn't really have a place. She doesn't have allies at this point. She has literally just been dropped off into a hostile country. I don't know what's going to go on with Gideon. I suspect this might be part of his plan, because that's, you know, kind of Gideon, but also, what if it's not? What if he just came home and got arrested?
I feel like he either thinks that this is part of, well, because this is before William would have had a chance to talk to Harrow, because they got off the boat first, Rune and Gideon. And part of the deal that he made with William was, you're going to go convince Harrow not to kill me because I have this plan for the bargain, using Rune as a bargaining chip. So William has not had a chance to go talk to Harrow just yet, in my belief. And
unless he just sent a beep 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 beep, kill Gideon, beep 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 beep. Yeah, Gideon's a douche. Beep 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 beep.
And then, but he is incredibly. He's almost not surprised. He's very calm. He's taking it in stride that they have showed up. Though I guess he would know, because Harrow had told him, you know, you're a failure, you gotta come back home. And this is probably for some kind of punishment. And he leaves with his hands tied in front of him. But I don't know if that's part of his plan, or just he has to now somehow get out of this, and we don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. I don't know enough to speculate, and I'm like, oh, how dare you?
I'm ready to keep reading the next 10
chapters. I'm ready to keep reading. And I think that's also important when we talk about, like, I'm ready to keep reading, because we had stuff that were like, I'm really tired of hearing about how you guys don't trust each other and you don't want to talk to each other and you are going to betray each other, and I'm over it. But I still want to keep reading, because this plot is like really good, and these characters are still really well thought out, despite not talking to each other.
Even with some narration choices, you know, we still want to find out. We still want to keep reading. It's still the whole, just one more chapter.
Yeah, the book was like, don't fight me, baby. And we were like, okay.
That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation, so don't forget to rate the show, drop a comment, and share your thoughts in the episode poll. And remember, subscribing means you'll never miss an episode or interview as we launch into more amazing stories together. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook and his cats. So when you share your favorite episode, be sure to tag us at Booked All Night Pod on Threads, Instagram, and Facebook, and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. For more information, like reading schedules and dates on our upcoming interviews, check out the link in the show notes. That's link.bio/bookedallnight. lnk.bio/bookedallnight for those of you who don't check the show notes. Until next time, my little Libernauts, this is Jessica Mary, Kay Leigh, Magdalyn Ann, and producer Rob signing off and reminding you to stay booked all night.